Is this thing on? We are having some technical difficulties here at the Z05 studios. Once again, internet is flummoxing me. So what's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic, whenever you're watching this, coming to you, obviously filmed with a potato from the bunker because the light kits seem to have a mind of their own as well. I guess things that run on electricity just aren't getting along well with me this evening or ever, like lifetime situations, which brings me to the point. So the title of the show should pretty much give away what I'm going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about e-supercharging. How can you use a mild hybrid system with one of these vehicles? Why is it that you don't ever see them except in limited applications? Why have they failed in the past? And why is it that Mopar will probably not be using anything like as what you may have been heard of or described so far? The whole e-muscle thing bleeding into that kind of a better looking charger that's being shown off at SEMA right now. Another e-xcriment that we're talking about just in general as we go along with this chat. So I'll let some of you guys go ahead and roll up as I get my sparkling water and my Powerade all wrapped into one spot. So mild hybrids, electric supercharging. This is a topic that has been in and out of people's imaginations for quite a while. And what I wanted to do real quick is give you guys some basic sleight of hand math to help you to understand why, number one, e-supercharging and mild hybrids, the way that you have with the e-torque systems, what those mean and how they can help with performance, but they don't help in the way that you might think. Also, wanted to talk a little bit about that e-muscle, get your ideas on that contraption that they're showing off at SEMA, and kind of get some ideas from you guys as far as what you think about where that whole product is moving towards. So I thought it was kind of adorable in a way, just not to get ahead of myself, that they threw that thing on a drag pack. You know, leave it to Mopar to try to sex up something that is a whopping, what, 600 horsepower? Listen, I know that's a lot, but 440 kilowatts, I mean, I'm sorry, it is 600 horsepower. I know it's instant torque, but I'm sorry, hasn't the internet taught us and hasn't Dodge taught us that more is better and 600 and anything is less than, not greater than? So cute reference to the 440 kilowatt and the 340 kilowatt deal for the roughly 450 horsepower and whatever, but they're referencing kilowatts. So here we go again. Marketing's got themselves a fish online, right? God bless. Anyway, let's get to the mild hybrid stuff, guys, because this is stuff I want to give you guys a little bit of math to play with and give you guys a little bit of understanding about why these systems don't work as well, maybe as you thought. So let me break down how superchargers work from a parasitic point of view. Y'all know how they work. You use an engine to create heat for turbos or create turning torque to spin a supercharger that spins an impeller that feeds more air into the engine. Thus the name supercharging, or in this case, higher than atmosphere air charge into the intake manifold. It's where supercharging gets its name. But what you may not realize is how much power that it actually takes to turn a supercharger. So let me put this into perspective. A supercharger of any kind, whether it's a Roots, turbo, or a centrifugal style supercharger, has a certain amount of power that it takes to actually make the thing suck the air in and compress it. For a Roots style supercharger, the typical for our engines, the ones that we're talking about here, typical parasitic loss is somewhere around 80 to 100 horsepower. So the supercharger for Hellcats, for example, because that's always the default car. So let's pick on the Hellcat for a minute. The The IHI supercharger for the Hellcat requires roughly 80 horsepower to make that thing turn the two big rotors, roughly 14,500 RPM, to make the 10 pounds of boost that the car makes, to make the power that it does. Now, you have to fuel that power. You have to fuel that extra power, and the output is the total output of the system minus your parasitic loss. In this case, call it 80 horsepower just for round numbers. Now, at the same power level, a centrifugal supercharger will require somewhere around 70 horsepower, maybe 65 horsepower to generate that same amount of power. But remember that it's making that power way on the right side of the dyno chart. So it will require less, and then the harder you spin it, the more it will require. That is a more or less logarithmic parasitic loss chart. Going back to that root style or positive displacement supercharger, because of the heat and the efficiency loss, it needs more and more and more power to make, or the input into it. In other words, you got to spin it harder and harder and harder, which reduces efficiency and thus would require, say, to make 14 pounds of boost instead of 10, it may require 120 horsepower. So it would require more than the 40% or 50% more. You can kind of see where this is going. So turbos are a little bit different. They're more linear. They do have a roughly 10% power consumption to produce whatever power you're making. So if you're making 500 horsepower, it probably took about 50 horsepower to drive the turbos to make that power. So turbos are more efficient. They use up less power, but they are more complicated in terms of efficiency, in terms of packaging. Roots are the easiest in terms of packaging. They're the cleanest, but they're the least efficient, although they make the most usable power down low, or can at least. And then you have centrifugal, which is somewhere in the middle. Now, the reason why mild hybrid systems don't work is I want you to consider the horsepower numbers that we were just talking about. Realistic power numbers to turn superchargers or turbochargers at the power levels that we're working with are always going to run somewhere in that 80 odd horsepower number range, just so that we've got some place to start off. More power, less power would require less parasitic loss, or would induce or would have less parasitic loss. To get an electric motor, and this is the funny thing, to get an electric motor to generate 50 something horsepower, it's not like you just take a 50 horsepower electric motor and boop, put it on the motor and have that thing spin the crank the way that the e-torque does. The e-torque does that, by the way, by using a 48 volt electric system, and it only generates the torque that it generates for a split second. I mean, it's a grand total of maybe a full 2 seconds worth of actual work that it does to get the thing moving. But it does so many other things with regenerative braking, helps the truck downshift, helps the truck upshift, and kills some of the parasitic loss so that the truck just in general makes a little bit more power. But from a power, like what you would consider to be a power generating entity, it's really only for, let's call it a second, and that's giving it a lot of credit. And then the power has to be turned off because there's no benefit to it anymore after that. The same applies if you try to run like something like the e-charger system from about 6 years ago, where they tried to make this 50 kilowatt motor more or less like what you would understand the e-torque to be, except this was a true power adder. But the problem is that a 50 kilowatt motor is about this big when you're feeding it with what, 48 volts or even 100 volts. It doesn't really matter at this point. It's about this big. The whole system is going to end up with any real capacity because of the extra power and the work that the thing is doing. the whole system is going to weigh about 200 odd pounds, up to 250 pounds, depending on how much you're actually putting into the system. And so now to get 150 foot-pounds of torque, you are putting 300 or to at least 250 pounds worth of extra weight into the vehicle, which isn't necessarily a good thing. And what ends up happening with that is that you don't get the power on the big end. You get it all down low. That's where electric motors make all of their power. So when you're talking about electric supercharging in the OE world, what that typically is that is a lag system. That is a system that will help keep the intake manifold pressurized through a transitional area, but it's not pressurizing the system the way that you would think a supercharger would be pressurizing it when you go to wide open throttle, with the idea being like when you went wide open throttle, it would trigger the electric motor and that would start feeding boost into the engine. Again, the problem is to do it effectively, to do it in that way means that you have to generate well over 100 horsepower to spin the thing as fast as you would need to. And you can say, well, you don't need the horsepower, you need the torque. Well, yeah, maybe, but you still need to feed the thing through a gear reducer. In other words, you're going to have to use the torque to spin the compressor, which is now you're right back to horsepower. The math ends up working out. It's the way physics is. And so now you're looking at a situation, again, where you have to generate somewhere around 80 to 100 horsepower, and that is a lot to ask of an electric motor that's not of a significant size. So that's why they don't exist in the world that we live in, and that's why the eTorque system is not an electric supercharger or an electric any type of charger. It's just a mild hybrid contraption that adds some torque, but mainly is there to help in eliminating parasitic losses so that the whole system makes more power. It's just eliminating some of the parasite loss that you get. That's what the eTorque does. Truck runs good. Although you'd never notice it in quarter mile times, but that's a story for a completely other day. And the funny thing about all of this talk about, and the reason why I'm going over this is there's a lot of talk about electric supercharging, mild hybrids. What can we do to make the latest, the next generation of these cars really work? And the problem is that mild hybrids are difficult because it's almost like having a passive system where it kind of is there, but it kind of isn't. It's not really adding a lot of power, but it is intrusive from a packaging point of view. Whereas a true hybrid would incorporate a large pancake motor, basically the size of your flywheel and about that wide. They're big things, but they fit in the transmission. They generate about 120 horsepower, even up to 170 horsepower and about 250 odd pound-feet of torque through the use of obviously the large motor and a pretty hefty size battery pack. But in this case, it's worth it because you can actually distribute the battery throughout the car in this case. And there's a lot of talk about hybridization again. Personally, I haven't really ever been a huge fan of hybridization because to me, yes, it adds power to the powertrain, but it also adds, well, complexity and weight to the entire vehicle. The extra weight can be mitigated, obviously, with the power, and the braking system being overtaxed can be helped by regenerative braking technology. But again, how long does that stuff last? What happens when it doesn't work? Obviously, you start using more brakes. Although I can tell you that in Stormy, I'm loving it because it's so much regenerative braking that you don't even notice any brake dust on the wheels of these trucks. It's actually pretty cool. But as good as the technology is, it is fiction. It is fantasy to think that you're going to have an electric motor setup in a car that is only going to aid in supercharging, which would be so over and above inefficient, because to make any extra power, you're going to use more power in the electric motor than what you're going to gain from the boost that you would put through the actual engine. And that is to say, you'd be better off just making it a true hybrid with an electric motor And that's how this whole system works. Again, it's just a physics problem at this point. There's no free lunch. And that's why when you start to look at what you have to put into an electric supercharger, like what would be considered like an electric turbo is what they would call it, you would have to generate what is in essence 150 horsepower worth of input to probably get roughly 120 horsepower out of it. So again, that's why you just don't see them being utilized everywhere. Believe me, if it was that easy, you'd be seeing this technology and would have seen it for a long time leading up to this. You'd have two big electric motors spinning turbos and batteries and everything else, because there's no technology in this that's modern. It's a speed controller, an inverter, and that's about it. I mean, to create, and you would need a generator for, recharging the system. So anyway, something fun to consider, but it just doesn't work in the real world. It's like, let's add 300 pounds to the car to get an extra 150 horsepower out of it that we could have got for a lot less weight if we just went with a normal hybrid architecture. Okay. Anyway, getting away from that, getting into that, whatever that new e-charger was that they were showing at SEMA. Good looking thing. I mean, it's about time that they got away from whatever the Wraith thing was that they were talking about. And it looks more like a traditional car at this point. At least the one that they were showing at SEMA was, keeping in mind that this is a concept and of course, nowhere near what we're going to be seeing in the real world, right? Okay. Well, here's the deal. This is basically just marketing for what could be or what might end up being direct connections, direct line of sight to some semblance of relevancy, in that they'll be able to sell you the upgrade kits for this car, potentially up to well over 800 horsepower. Right now, 340 kilowatts, which is just the other side of 450 horsepower. By the way, in case you ever wonder, like, how do they get a horsepower out of kilowatts? 750 kilowatts is 1,000 horsepower. So just basically that's how it works. We used to divide by, like, I don't know, 0.6 or whatever the number is. Y'all smart people figure that out. But anyway, 750 kilowatts is 1,000 horsepower. So when you're looking at those kilowatts, that'll give you at least a benchmark to go from. So anyway, again, talking about how this whole thing is going to end up breaking down. You got direct connection that's going to be putting all of this together for the e-cars, but we still don't have any word yet as far as what the direct connection for the internal combustion cars is looking like. Right now, they're apparently still trying to get these things passed through emissions on some level. Not really sure how well that's going because, we were supposed to have these things commercially available. What was it? I don't know. I've lost track at this point. 6 months ago. The problem with all of that is that a lot of folks have lost interest at this stage of the game. And with the pricing of cars at this juncture being so high, you've got so many people that are just kind of shaking their heads and going, look, I'm not even going to be part of whatever all of this is, because they don't have the coin for it. So without any real direction, a lot of folks have kind of forgot about direct connection, and they're more or less moving on and moving forward with their lives, looking at what the S650 may have to offer, or looking on the used market and thinking about what they could get their hands on that might actually make sense to buy right now. So there's that. Also wanted to touch on a little bit about this Halo car. The car that they're supposed to be or were supposed to be releasing at SEMA, that Halo car. Kaniskis is talking about, having everything figured out Q1 of the upcoming year. But the funny thing about that is, there's talk of them blowing it up. And this is something that I don't know. This is almost like the cherry on top for me for Dodge, because The funny thing about the guy even talking about blown up 7 engines already. You mean to tell me that with the collective intellectual might of Dodge, FCA, Stellantis, with the combined number of college degrees, hours of mathematics study, hours of mechanical design engineering, somebody has figured out how to blow up not 1, 5, but 7 engines, trying to tune it on what I can only speculate to be E85. Gee, that must make us in the tuning world freaking Nostradamus. Because if memory serves me correctly, people have been tuning on alcohol for a long time and haven't had any problems scattering or showing the private internals of any engines to the rest of the world unwittingly and immediately. So I'm finding that little story hard to believe. It's one of these bullshit stories that come out of what is supposed to be the skunk works of FCA or Dodge or whatever. In that it's, wow, we're trying to make so much power and deliver so much power to you that we've scattered it this many times. If that were the case, let me ask y'all something. If you took your car to a tuner and they blew it up 7 times, would you want to go to their direct connection tune and put that in your Hellcat? Would you? These are the same engineers, the same calibration engineers, I would assume, that are putting those tunes together. Do they not know how this works? The funny thing about the quote is, it's easy to make power. It's just hard to make drivable something. No, it's not. It's easy. It's all easy. We all been doing it for so long. Everybody's seen up everybody else's skirt when it comes to tuning and alcohol tuning, E85, E90, Q10, pick your, or Q, whatever, pick your freaking fuel. Race gas tunes. What are you looking at? What are you looking for? A quick ring would have had this situation sorted out before lunch. I don't get it. But getting back to the whole lore thing, remember it was, well, the Demon is so fast, it doesn't even qualify for an NHRA exemption because it's just too fast and you can't put a cage in it. They had to rewrite the rules for this car. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. In other words, somebody is going to be sitting around saying, man, they trying to give us all of this power. They're trying to give us everything they can give us. Man, they're pulling out all the stops. Don't you love that one? Pulling out all the stops. What does that even mean? What stops are they pulling out? What is a stop? I don't even know what that is. What does that phrase mean, pulling out all the stops? Well, I guess Dodge is doing whatever that means by trying to give you all this horsepower. By the way, I got news for you. What kind of dumbass calibration engineer can't make 60 more horsepower out of a freaking red-eye combination engine? Think about that. The Demon on 100 octane made 840 horsepower, and it's not like it's on some kind of a ragged edge. You mean to tell me that with a bigger supercharger making more boost, with a higher octane fuel in E85 that's oxygenated at that due to the extra oxygen that the E brings to the table, that is as easy on a tuner as any fuel could ever hope to be. It's like the tuner's best buddy fuel. Like, it's buddy friendly. All right. It's like it goes to the store and gets you banana pudding kind of buddy friendly. You mean to tell me that they can't extract 60 or 70 more horsepower? Are you listening to what I'm saying? It's only 60 horse. It ain't even 10% more. It's not even 10% more. 10% at this game would have been 84 horsepower. We're only asking for 60 or 70 for this Halo car to get it passed into the 900 range over the Demon. Are you kidding me? God. You've got to be absolutely kidding me on this. They're blowing up 7 motors because they're trying to make 60 more horsepower. That is not a ringing endorsement for the freaking engine itself. That's more like they're not that fragile. They're just not. And as a matter of fact, the Hellcat, and by association, the Red Eye / Demon architecture is the most robust, in my opinion, that has ever been released into the world as a production engine. Terminator Cobras are up there. The GT500s are really good too. But let's be real. That all of those engines that I just mentioned, Hellcat variants and all of them, wouldn't have a problem at 1,200 horsepower. We've seen them over and over, bored to death with 1,300 horsepower Hellcat combinations. They're trying to come up with 900 and they're blowing them up. Again, I will ask you the question. Would you now take your car to a direct connection? Let's say they get everything sorted out, right? And you've got a Hellcat. You just bought a Hellcat, whatever. And you want to put that direct connection kit on your car. Would you take it there now, knowing that they've gone and blown the hell up 7 engines trying to tune it on E? It's corn, son. You can't mess up a corn tune. Like, you can make it so you can run it lean and it won't like it, but most of the time it just quits making power. You'll know that you're not right because it will stop making the power. You can run it rich, but you'll know it ain't right at rich because, well, it just won't make the same amount of power. I have taken cars on the dyno and done power sweeps with them and gone low timing, find a good timing, keep going, add 2, 3, 4 degrees of timing past peak power before it starts to fall off, or it starts to fall off and there's no detonation. This is me, dumb, tired, bald dude on a dyno trying to wrap up a E85 tune on something. And they're over there talking, we've blown up 7 engines. Hopefully we don't blow up another one. Should be a funny story for later. Let me tell you what's funny. What's funny is that you will never see my car catching a direct connection calibration after all this cutesy. Well, shucks, we done messed up again, y'all. Hell no. What kind of freaking dumb stuff is that? You're trying to, like, I'm supposed to now trust Dodge on a calibration on a modified vehicle after they've gone and screwed that up? What is arguably the easiest thing on the planet. That is like handing somebody the bread, the ham, and the just make a sandwich. And it goes meat, bread, and they stacked it up on its end. It has got to be one of the dumbest narratives that's been thrown out there. I will not accept that it is fact. I will only accept that this is fiction. And they're trying to soft shoe their way around the fact that they can't get something to pass emissions somewhere. And the reason why I say that is because if you think that there is any way in the world that Dodge would have allowed All Girls Garage to put one of those direct connection pulley kits or whatever on a Red Eye on TV without having all of those kits with EOs ready to go on shelves with pulleys and everything else. EO is an executive order, by the way. It's like it's a shorthand way of saying it's emissions compliant. You'd have to be out of your mind, right? But it was filmed and had to be put out into the world. And here it is, egg on their face. They put this out into the world on a show that a lot of folks watch. Knowledgeable people putting this thing together and testing it. But it doesn't exist in the real world. And so now we've got that type of mentality getting out there. In other words, we can't get any of this stuff to pass a emissions thing. Well, are they really making this? I'm hoping they're making it up. Okay. Because I'm telling you, you can't tell me they've blown up 7 engines on corn at what is probably 18 pounds of boost, because everybody that has ever been in and around this stuff for any real length of time, talking about shop owners and things like that, has put together Hellcat combinations making 16, 18, 20 pounds of boost. The higher boost numbers are all on corn, and all of the Bravo packages are still running around. That's like excessive Racer X's old car. All of those cars are still running around. I know of one of them, as a matter of fact, I know of one, the guy, it's the only guy. I love this dude too. I used to hate to have to call him when we found other things that were broken on his car because it took it somewhere else, and it's that whole story. But anyway, the one guy that I know that still has a car after he's done a ton of modifications to it, he still has that car to this day, and he still loves that car. And that he drives that car like he hates it. I mean, hates it. And the car loves it. And he just, anyway, long story short, car runs great. Folks have been doing this stuff for a long time, and here it is. Dodge can't seem to get their act together. Just doesn't, I don't know. It just doesn't, it doesn't have the flavor. It doesn't have the taste of, it has the taste of fiction to it. Like, it doesn't have the taste of reality, I guess is where I'm going with that. So anyway, let me catch up with you guys, because I've been this whole time. I don't know if y'all heard that, but that's the sound of an engine that's like doesn't want to stick with the living anymore. That sounded like ass. Anyway, it's raining, by the way, guys. So the I think the gate to Velocito right now is shut. Ardell's in saying, what up, B? What up, Ardell? Well, let me put on my glasses of reading. Eric Taylor's in. What's up, Eric? Got the flex. Smoking at 5. Howdy, B. When are you ordering your electric supercharger for Revlon? Yeah, no kidding, right? Marco Muay Thai, my man. Dude, so I put in 400 meters today and 1,000-meter sprints in rowing. And dude, I feel like I've been hit by a bus. Mike saying, I can see them wanting to compete with a Plaid, but hell no. I don't. We'll see about that. They're going to need all-wheel drive to compete with a Plaid. X says, what up, Professor B? What's up, X? Smoking at 5 saying, I'm just waiting for the prices. So far, everything they've announced has been really only for the rich. Real talk, my friend. Even the Elephant engines at $30K. Who's buying these? Who is buying those? It's definitely not the average fan. By the way, fun fact, Elephant engine with the aluminum block, not all that great. Sovereign saying, hey, B, what's up, Sovereign? Smoke say everything, almost everything Dodge has done the last 2 years has been overpromise and underdeliver. A lot of people would agree with that. Champagne's talking about an S2K. I tell you what, I mean, yeah. Y'all remember those? Those are fun cars. Modern Red saying, what up, Professor B? What up, Modern? Sorry, I guess One Fast 29 was delayed because they keep blowing up the engine. No, it blew up 7 engines, supposedly. I think I got to that part of it, yeah. Mike's talking about sounds efficient. That's what I was talking about, the mild hybrid supercharger setups. What a flipping mess that it has turned out to be. Well, it probably should have been a working model before they told the world it was coming. Yeah. Sovereign saying, honestly, I can't see electric being more reliable and durable than ICE vehicles. The thing is with that is The electric stuff can be. Electric motors, there's just not a lot to go bad. The problem that you end up running into with EV stuff is just the power source, the batteries. And that's what's just scares the crap out of me. Mainly because I look at it from a safety standpoint. You've seen what happens when one of those batteries goes off. I mean, it's not a good thing. Someone said, I doubt Tesla can last for 20 plus years. I don't know. Like I say, they're getting to the point. They're getting to the point now where they're just used cars. And I think we talked about that before, but it bears repeating, guys. I mean, to me, I don't know what it is. Okay. Call me, I don't know what the word is. Sentimental is probably not it, but I feel sorry for the car. Okay. So when you see a Tesla that is now a used car, it's kind of like seeing that office hot chick that you used to work with now working somewhere where you kind of wish you weren't anyway there already, but you see her working there and she's not really on the main stage. That's kind of the way I see Tesla, right? She's like lunch crew at best as a used car. Like, and the problem is it ends up being like second or third owner used car at this point. Where I'm going with it's just, I feel weird. It just kind of gives me I don't know. I get kind of I get grossed out by it. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I feel like I'm like, look, if I were to show up at your house and say, here's a blender. Okay. But it's my old blender. And let's say I didn't clean it and the blades are kind of dull and the buttons have got like some funk in them. And you're like, well, this is gross, but it's a blender. Like if you needed a blender, like if you're like into blenders, you're like, yeah, I guess. But I mean, how do you clean it? Like, do you wash it in the dishwasher? You can't wash a blender in the dishwasher, right? So you've got this gross thing that isn't going to get any less gross. And it's just like there, like you're almost going to be ashamed to use the thing. You're going to be grossed out by it. That's how I feel about the Tesla as a used car. I'm not saying I wouldn't buy one and I'm not saying I wouldn't rock one. I'm just saying I've got to, I don't know why my head will not allow me to see it any other way. I really don't. Maybe my sense of humor kind of takes it to these places. I mean, I can at least admit to that part of it, but somewhat. But I mean, I don't know. I look at the e-cars in such an odd way differently than the internal combustion engine cars. Maybe I can get over that. It's got to be, obviously it's a me thing, but I have got to, I just got to put it out there, man. There's something for whatever reason that's just a little bit creepy about them. What is the phrase, the uncanny valley? So if you're not familiar with what uncanny valley means, it is a phrase that is used to describe artificial intelligence or like a very lifelike robot or something that is creepy. In other words, it has enough convincing qualities to where you recognize it immediately as what it is intended to be recognized as, but it has no other real intrinsic qualities that will allow you to engage with that device, that contraption, that thing on a personal level, at the level that thing would be. I guess it's kind of hard to explain. It's akin to a liminal space, but it has to do with things that you could directly interact with as a thing. That's what that uncanny valley is describing. That's electric vehicles for me. Like, I know that functionally they're really good, but there's so much downside to it, and there's so much misinformation about them that, but then you see them on the used market and they're just gross. Anyway, sorry, I heading out into a different direction there. Smoke saying by the time they get it all worked out, we're going to run out of lithium. Mike's talking about California running out of rolling blackouts, which is kind of messed up. Yeah. Mike's saying Common Core math. Yeah. Some of y'all caught that when I was doing, oh yeah, just divide by 0.6. Yeah, no, it's, you subtract 25% from the horsepower value. Let's see. Oh, my say, like all the lithium battery junkyards in Europe. How do you recycle those things? Let's see. Oh, Sovereign's talking about battery packs. Smoke saying Dodge should have hired some GM engine tuners. Yeah. Rift is in. What's up, man? Like I said, smoke and mirrors and engines. Yeah. Earaches in saying, I appreciate you putting all this in perspective. Sure. Thank you for hanging out, man. I appreciate you appreciating the perspective. I really do. Some are saying 6.2 is solid. 6.2 is incredibly solid. I've seen 6.2s deal with use, misuse, and abuse. 3 MDE qualifiers there. I've seen them deal with situations and scenarios that they should never have. They should never have survived, and they did. Ruth saying I'm making 9 bills on my 2015 Cat with just upper pulley on ethanol. That's, yeah. I mean, that's what they do. Oh, Sovereign saying Racer X made 1K too. Yeah, that car is I've got a lot of hands-on experience and just a lot of time with Excessive. I really liked that car a lot. That was a real fun car to drive. It was incredibly stable and just really just an overall good combination front to back. The tune lives on in one of my computers somewhere. Mike's saying they can't, but they did, talking about blowing it up. Oh, Doc Div saying in his experience, he likes to be a little bit rich. Sure it does. But yeah, E85 is real forgiving. It's incredibly forgiving stuff. So I'm saying B Mason's like George Collin bringing the truth. Love me some George, man. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Duke saying, oh, he's got a ton of E85 experience tuning and his personal use, which is very true. Very forgiving. They had to have worked hard to blow those engines up. Would they lean it out as far as they could to put 20 degrees in it? Hell, I mean, I've tried leaning out E combinations, and yeah, they like to be a little bit rich, but they're cool with being lean. To me, it almost sounds like somebody just went in and just absolutely butchered up. I don't know. I don't even know if it's true. It'll be some kind of a story that comes out, and it'll sound really well crafted, and people just will sit there and listen to it and all of that. And to me, it's just going to be another crock of crap. Monterey saying, I drive my car the same way. Like you hate it. Eric saying doesn't pass the smell test for sure. What's funny is that you talk about doesn't pass the smell test. I actually caught a bad tank of E85 will blow your car up, though. If your sensor isn't working correctly, if you're running a GM sensor, which they always work fine, but in fact, I think they're set up to default to gasoline. But anyway, I had one car. I had one car where it didn't make power on the dyno on the first hit, and I figured out real quick it was bad E85. The second time that happened, I realized it when I was strapping the car down, and the exhaust, because the car was just actually, it was warming up. It was on the dyno. And in fact, I had loaded the car on the dyno and I was rolling it out. In other words, you strap it down just to where it's on the dyno and not moving too much. You roll it out to where it kind of finds its own natural center. And then you ratchet everything down tight. And I was like, this thing doesn't smell like corn. And sure enough, you look at the fuel trims, it's like, oh, this thing's not good at all. Let's see. Oh, Sovereign's asking about the Factory 5. No, I did not see any of that yet. I haven't had a chance to check it out. Dr. said some Mustang owners got his straight pipes tonight. Yeah, that one sounded bad. If you're going to do that, please run an H pipe. Do not run straight pipes with an X pipe. It's the worst sound that you can possibly dream up for a car. It sounds awful. Jacob's asking, who do you recommend to tune a 2019 Hellcat Challenger? Just a mild street car. Don't want to go too far with it. Just intake, cat delete, tune, and maybe a pulley later on. I mean, it depends on where in the world you are, honestly. If you've got, do you have software? Are you willing to ship your car? I'm not a huge fan of remote tunes or can tunes from guys. I am more of the opinion, because I worked at a shop where we had people sending their cars to our shop from all over the planet, not just all over the United States. We had cars in from Germany. We had cars in from China. We had cars in from Dubai. So yeah, I mean, it's not, people will go way out of their way to get their car to a tuner that really knows their work. So in that case, I'd say Pikes, just get the car to Pikes Performance. That way it's done on a dyno, load tested by somebody with a whole lot of experience. Because remember, I mean, you're trusting $20,000. Just think of it like this when it comes to tuning, okay? You're trusting a failure cost of roughly $20,000 on, say, $2,000 worth of tuning. If things go wrong, or if there's a mechanical issue that creates problems with tuning, it needs to be at the shop so it can be addressed, sorted out, and fixed. There's nothing worse than trying to source a mechanical issue from 500 miles away when you don't have you don't have the car there. There are certain things you just kind of learn to know what is going on with the car. I just broke my glasses. What's going on with these cars. But the reality is that you need to budget in shipping the car wherever it's going, plus the tuning to get it right. Let's see. Oh, Doc's talking about one of the cars still needing the 3, 4, and 7 coil pack. I think I know what car he's talking about. Doc's hanging out with Sovereign. S2K, lots of fun. When I was a lot younger, I had a guy that lived beneath me that had an S2K, and he was huge into SCCA, all types of SCCA stuff. Oh, Doc Diff had, yeah, fast fast supercharge S2K. Village bicycle that used Tesla. Mike saying they're as ugly as a used gross blender. Yeah. Eric saying good evening, everyone, and good evening, B Mason. What's up? Oh, got the flex. I like it. Doc saying he would love a Tesla Model. Listen, I mean, they're awesome cars. They're super fast. Nothing is faster than them on the street. I mean, it's the fastest car you can buy at any price. So it is what it is, man. Somebody say it's like buying a Corolla with 200,000 miles on it. Maybe you go another 200. Maybe it'll blow up on the way home. That's what you got to look forward to. Sovereign's not liking the battery durability. Oh, Doc's hanging out with, let's see, Eric. Good evening, Eric. How are you, buddy? Oh, Riff's saying if they could make the batteries easy to pull out and put back in, it'd be a lot better. So here's the thing. There was a lot of talk at one point. I don't know if I agree how good of an idea this would have been, but there was a lot of talk about standardizing batteries for EVs, where you would have the ability to just, when you needed gas, you would go to a service station and it would be basically removing a battery pack and inserting another one, which sounds miserable to me. Obviously, there's a lot of logistics that wouldn't let that play, but obviously for manufacturing reasons and copyright, that is not going to be happening. Oh yeah, because they use everything that is the battery in that car. Some of these manufacturers, the way that the battery is tied in and tied together, it's part of the actual structure of the car. So it's not like you're taking batteries out of something and then putting batteries into like a flashlight. It's not like that. It would be the equivalent of if the body of the flashlight were made out of the batteries that power the flashlight. Think of it that way. That's how they actually build the floor and the substructure of some of those cars. Mike saying he was sad to see racetracks get rid of excessive. Me too. Thank you very much, Dr. Diff. I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that, my friend. Why isn't it popping up on the thing though? Sovereign's talking about the nickel metal hydride battery in the Prius. The problem with the nickel metal that one, nickel metal hydride, those things, is that they lose capacity faster than lithium ion, and you can't crank up the charging on them. But they do all right as far as just holding power and doing battery things, but they're still, how do you recycle them and all of that? But yeah, good old nickel metal hydrides, low power density, but yeah, it is what it is. Nobody's going to move away from the lithium ion variants. Lithium ferrous is really good. It can take a beating and not fail, but they're expensive. And they're not as high energy density as some of the lithium, the various types of lithium polymer batteries. Eric's hanging out with Dr. Diff. Eric brings up a good point. Why is it that Dodge isn't developing, 32 valve, small displacement ripper motors? And that can be put in concert with a hybrid platform. I think what they're going to do, I think they're going to hang most of their internal combustion and I guess by association, their hybrid offerings. I think they're going to base all of that off of the Hurricane 6-cylinders, mainly because it's a whole lot of power and they can tout fuel economy or whatever it cruise. But yeah, you're right. I don't know why they never really did do that. But again, it doesn't fall into the marketing that they're sitting at right now with all the Hemi stuff. Daria's asking, he's thinking about getting the Kong throttle body, the 108 for his Hellcat. Would I recommend? Man, I tell you what, Dario, if it were my car, and I had a completely hogged out snout, I would still recommend getting a tune, because you need to tell the computer at that point that you've got that big throttle body on there, or you may run into a surge. I know some people have and some people haven't run into the surge issue, but it can get a little bit annoying. I can tell you that unless you've done quite a bit of work to the car, that larger throttle body is not going to do you any good on a stock plenum. It's just, we've tried. All right. And what stinks is that I had a Fastman throttle body that was a true through-ported Hellcat throttle body. And we tried to make it on my car. We tried to make it work on my car. It did nothing for my car. Then we put it on a red eye 275 upper car, which it was strange because my snout, just naturally, the casting was a little bit bigger than his, the opening. But it really didn't matter. The throttle body fit it fine. I just had to do a little bit more. It was a little bit more tedious to get it to line up just right. I'm a real stickler for how throttle bodies port line up. Anyway, long story short, it was bigger than his stock throttle body, and it picked up just a wee bit. So that's a car that was running 940s pretty much like clockwork, and I just didn't do a whole lot for him. Again, I think that if you've hogged out the snout, there might be some validity to it, but I wouldn't go into that mod without a tune, and obviously without the ported snout as well. Oh, talking about, I guess Dr. Dip's talking about something he's saying. It's way over my head. I guess I must have been. Chinese EV company is already doing that with the whole battery pack swap. Oh, are they? Yeah. Oh, Dr. Dip saying true story. Was about your pipes tuning statement. Yeah. Smokey 5 saying with Jeep using the new Hurricane engines, maybe those will be the new hot rods instead of Dodge cars. I mean, there's going to be a lot of hot rods coming up with using that engine for sure. No question about it. Once guys start getting their hands on it, we'll see how far they can take it. I have no idea. Sovereign's talking about the lithium. Yeah, the LIFE, LIFEPO, which is the lithium ferrous phosphate, or lithium ferrous, sorry. And it is very durable. Rift is liking the idea of ethanol. Brazil went all ethanol. Pretty much everything that's sold in Brazil is all run on ethanol. Oh, Doc saying a 108 throttle body is really snappy. Yeah, but it does get annoying. And like I say, a lot of them have issues with surging. Jim Mopar, what's up, buddy? Good evening. How's the weather up there, my friend? We are down here begging for density altitude. We had like 3 days and that's it. And the track wasn't open on none of them. And it wasn't even awesome either. Let's see. Oh, I just saw, in case you haven't, oh, okay. Well, I guess that answers my question on how the weather is. In case you didn't hear, now you have to beat a 10.06.4. All right. I swear I need to get rent a U-Haul and drag this thing up to Canada. That's going to be tough though. Congratulations on the number. I think, man, I don't know. So I've been playing with the tune just a little bit, and it's I don't know. I'm at the limit of what I can get away with 93 octane with the car. I think, realistically, the whole thing that, so Jim has got a stock tune stock boost Hellcat, and just cracked a 10.06. I ran a 10.08, and Jim, where were we at? Like it was a 10.10 or something like that. Anyway, long story short, I went a 10.08. Jim got me with a 10.07 and now backed it up with a 10.06. And I'm just down here going, I don't have my density altitude. Although I will tell you this, in basically 1,000 foot, I just went a 10.32. And so once the DA drops a little bit, we'll get her back to the track and try to data log her. So, but that car, my car, I was kind of surprised that it actually covered the number that it did. But we shall see. No, Doc, I'm seeing your comments. I'm seeing you interacting with a couple of guys here, but no, the super chat only popped up on mine. I didn't see it. Didn't pop up on the feed. Smoking saying 10.064. Nice. I like it. Eric saying, Dr. Diff, Eric's saying he's helping a friend with a 70 Hemi Cuda, getting it ready for next year car show. Very nice. It's funny. I never really could let my love of the older cars go. But man, I tell you what, it has been like Foxy, for example, is starting to qualify as an old car now. And man, I tell you what, every time I touch that car, something breaks, or I've got to fix something, or God only knows what. So all good stuff. But yeah, Jim Mopar coming in hot with a 10.064. Good Lord. I'll tell you what. So between me, let me think about this. It's me, Jim, Orange Crush, and maybe just a few other guys that I can think of off the top of my head, like a handful of us that are in that low 10.0 range somewhere with these stock boost cars. And it's funny because it's really funny because I've been accused of everything under the sun, trying to crack people with, you're running a lower pulley, or you're all kinds of stupid stuff. Anyway. So you smoking a 5B. You still have the old GM truck? If so, how's it running? Yes, I do. And it is right literally on the other side of that poster. Sierra is running really well. In fact, I drove it. When was it? I drove it last week, as a matter of fact, just putting around town. She rips. I need to get it re-geared. The only problem with that truck is that it is so aggressively geared that first gear is non-existent in that thing. For normal driving. and you just barely tip into the throttle, and it shifts into second gear at like 10 miles an hour. And it doesn't like you're floored, and it doesn't do it like that, but it's just, it's got a lot of gear, and it's a 3-speed automatic. So the truck really needs legs to be able to enjoy it more fully. Right now it's spinning at, 3,500 RPM just going down the highway. And that's not doing that truck any favors. That needs to be dropped down. So, Jim's saying, but it runs great. I mean, the truck it's like, the funny thing is that truck, it really does need a gear. It's got so much gear that it runs out of gear whenever I try to run a quarter mile with it. But it's a ripper. The truck's fun. I just really, like I say, it just needs to be re-geared. Jim saying I had one good day and that was it. This weekend will probably be about 75 feet, so no good DA. I hope the track is open for another week. I don't think there's a bunch more with the fuel. Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I don't know how. I mean, obviously, I'd like to get a single digit, but I'm having too much fun chipping away at these 10-0s. It's like, I think what would happen, here's the problem. I think if any of us ended up dropping an actual 9 anything, I think it would ruin it. I think that's the one pinch of salt too much in the stew. I think that the neck ringing in that low 10-10, 10-0, that whole thing, it's almost more fun. I think the second somebody really honestly goes 9s, first of all, I just have a hard time believing it. Like a normal sized person in a car that's not gutted. None of these cars are really gutted, like they're race prep, but most of them aren't. Actually, none of them that I'm thinking of are missing a whole bunch of car to make the car run what they do. But anyway, it's funny because you've got only a handful of us that are really still messing around with this stuff. And it's really funny because between myself, Jim, Orange Crush, really those 3 cars, if you were to look at the leaderboard for like the Red Eye group, we're like in the top 15 in the Red Eyes too. Anyway, it's just kind of funny. Doc saying 70 CUDA, love it. Yeah, they're nice. Ruth's asking, I see any power gain down low when I got my JLT. Man, I don't know. Yeah, I will say that the car 60 foot's a little bit better with it, but I'll be honest with you. I'm actually toying around with the idea of putting the stock airbox back in it. I was running the stock airbox with a stock filter right up until the point where, that setup was running, it ran a 10-10 with that setup. And then I went with a JLT just because I wanted to hear the thing. I wanted to hear the supercharger. And that's when it, in about the same air when a 1008. So, but it did 60 foot better on that pass. That was the 146 60 foot. And I knew I was on a pass when that number popped up. You can see me even in that video. I'm like, oh shoot. Because it pops up 146. And I didn't ever think that car had 60 foot of 146. Then again, I never thought the car would go a 10-0 anything or a 10-10 or a 10-20. I figured that car would be like a 10-30 car, and that would be fast enough for me. Dude, the car's a lot of fun. But I don't know. Did I notice any more power down low? Not necessarily. It's more fun to drive with that intake just because it's loud, but I don't know if I noticed any more power down low. I will say though, that when I took the car out on Sunday, air charge, it was again, kind of weird air, kind of on the humid side. And it was drawn like 144, 145 air charge. Jim saying nothing wrong with the stock airbox and factory filter. Ask me how I know. Man, I'm telling you, it's one of those funny things, man. I have been talking about, yes, run your airbox, stock air filter. It's going to be perfect for you. And it's just kind of one of those things. I kept beating guys with noisy intakes, and it is what it is. Like I say, I got one just because I love the sound of it. But as far as power goes, I don't know that it adds anything. Jim's all said, I got accused of the same things, especially getting 146 60-foot times in the cool weather and telling folks I still have a 262. So obviously I lie. Yeah, I know. And that's, what's funny is, it's having a 309, there's that extra shift, and there's the sketch factor when on launch. And there's been a few times, in fact, we talked about a couple of times swapping back to the 262, only because it would make launching easier. It would make it potentially a little bit more consistent at launch. I wouldn't be as worried about. There's a couple of things that the 262 would help. And again, I'm running a red eye drive shaft, so it's slick on the big end, but which makes life nice. But yeah, there's an argument to be made that the 262 really, once if you're at the level that we're at with these stock boost cars, is probably the right, potentially possibly the right way to go. It certainly doesn't hurt anything, obviously. For the heavier cars, the 309 I would say is a must, though. Doc Div said, I know a guy for years. I'll be giving you a shout when I'm ready. Trust me. Riff's asking about cradle lockout. I don't have one. None of the demons ever had one that I drove. None of the anything really helped. Excessive didn't have one, and it didn't really hurt anything. The cradle lockout, it's a good idea. I don't know how much it would actually help you, though. There's too many guys that are running way too fast without them, and that had been running really fast without that modification done to their car. So, but yeah, I just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it would help you a ton, to be honest with you. Eric's saying, Jim, that's pretty cool. Yeah, Jim's got his car dialed in, no doubt about it. Dr. Disc checking out. Catch you on the next one, buddy. But yeah, it's kind of fun. So I was driving it's funny. I was driving Little Miss Revlon last night or Sunday night. And that's why I put that video together, that Halloween, by the way, if nobody picked up on it, it was obviously a Halloween themed video, the scary fast or fast versus scary fast. And it's funny how quick folks tend to forget how fast these cars are. And I'm not immune to this. I mean, I talk about this all the time, and have tried to tell folks that there's a point that you get to in terms of power and tire choice that you have to have, what you can play with on the street, like legit, like hoon around with the thing and not be of the expectation that it is going to try to kill you at some point. But I don't know that it's I don't know that scary fast is a fun place to be, but I'll tell you this. The Hellcats where we're at with these stock boost Hellcats now, it is very entertaining. It will consume all of your attention, no doubt about it. Sovereign, I don't know what you're asking about AFK. Riff's asking, is getting some cradle lockouts worth it for the Hellcat? That's what I was saying earlier, man. I don't know. I mean, is it worth it? It's certainly not going to hurt anything. And if you talk to the guys that are making really big power, that are at the drag strip, often with their cars, they will probably argue that when they put cradle lockouts in their car, it made them feel better about the way that the car drove, that the way that it hooked, maybe for the higher horsepower guys, like the real high horsepower guys. So there's that, but you got to remember too, it depends on how you're driving the car on the track. If you're using any type of a trans brake type of a setup, there could be some, sorry, saying away from keyboard. Gotcha. So I guess you're going to be taking the car to the track a lot. Again, it's not going to hurt anything. So yeah, I would say if it'll make you feel better and it'll help the car maybe plant a little bit more at that power level, then maybe it's a good idea. Like I say, none of the demons that I've driven, and we're talking a lot of, 980 passes without cradle lockouts or anything like that didn't have any issues. And this is all foot brake stuff too, by the way, guys. So just kind of one of those things. It's not like you're, hitting the thing from the trans brake or anything like that. These are all, they're not soft launches, but it is what it is. It's foot brake launches. So, Alberta's asking, what are your thoughts on poly cradle bushings? Been having a little issue with wheel hop lately. They may help a little bit. My thing is wheel hop with these cars, I found, is a lot more tied in with what tire you're running and what tire pressure you're at. They can certainly help though. And I've never looked into installing them on my car, mainly because I just haven't ever had that problem. But before you start looking into that, make sure that you're not running too low of air pressure in your tires. What can happen is the way that independent rear suspension cars load up, it's never symmetrical. Well, I say it's less symmetrical, obviously, than a solid rear axle. But even with that, if it were symmetrical, you're still variable geometry with the independent rear suspension technology versus a regular single solid axle. So when the tires compress, you're putting more and more pressure on the insides of those tires, which can cause them to load up and then release. And that will cause a tire hop thing. So running the tires at a little bit higher pressure can help to eliminate some of that tire hop. I know a lot of guys will run tire pressures on the street like 25, 27 because they're trying to hook up. But the reality with that is that it can actually make the car wheel hop when it really wouldn't if the tire pressure was where it needs to be. I typically, for my stuff, don't run any less with the drag radial setup. With the street setup, I don't run any less than like 30 to 32. And I know that a lot of folks might disagree with that a little bit, but I found that running a more normalized air pressure for the street, even with the drag radials, helps them to last about as long as they're going to last either way. But what I've also found is that not only does it help them with wear, I don't have the wheel hop scenario that you may find in other situations. And of course, on ET Street Rs or DBRs, it doesn't have any of those. It doesn't have any of those effects at all. Jacob just got the DRS, and for his, just need to install it. Gotcha. Riff said he really wants to get a Gen 5 3.0 whip for the Cat, but have been told that since my engine is still stock, it's not worth it. Since the blower can pretty much push the engine to the peak already, that's not 100% accurate. Listen, like I say, we've had stock block Hellcats making 12, 13, 1,400 horsepower. So if it's in the right hands, you can spool it up pretty good and not really have to worry about it. There's a ton of stock red eyes with 3.0s running around at this point. So you know, there's in turn, and how much more durable is a red eye than a regular Hellcat? I don't know. Pick a percentage that's kind of low, but I don't know, 10, 15, I don't know. So, you know, that'll kind of give you, kind of put you in the mindset of where I am with that stuff. The main thing, it has a lower parasitic loss than the IHI. It's more thermodynamically efficient. In other words, at the same boost level, you'll be making less heat. That's the other side of it that I'm to understand of that blower. So it's very similar in design to the IHI 3.0 liter Elephant supercharger. So again, a very different supercharger from what you've got now. It's lightweight rotors. I mean, there's some trick stuff going in with that thing. True for the IHI 3.0 too. Rich saying the Gen 5, more power, less boost, good for the long run. Yeah. So it'll be a little bit more. I don't know if it'll be worth the investment. You're not hurting anything. I mean, like I say, there are a ton of guys running around with 10% lower, 275 uppers. They're just out there just ripping it, you know, and that's really, I mean, it's you're not that far removed from that combination. And that's with the 2.4 liter. So I think you'd be okay. I wouldn't overthink it is what I'm getting at. Evans, Ian saying thoughts on E85 with stock cats on a Scat Pack. Any other must-do mods to go along with the E85? The one modification I would do with E85 is I wouldn't do E85 on a Scat Pack. That's the modification that I would do to that thought, is don't do E85 on a Scatty. About what you're going to be looking at in terms of power gain. And keep in mind, I've got a lot of experience with stock cam and cammed Scatties with E85. Oh man, it's so frustrating too, because you want it to make more power, like you're begging this thing to make more power because it's E85. The problem is you run it, stock cam or aftermarket cam, it really doesn't matter. You basically run out of compression ratio. You just don't have enough to take advantage of E85. So let me give you an idea. And I used to have, this is the funny thing. I found one of the files that I had, and it's just a bunch of old dyno charts and stuff like that. I thought I had more than this, or more than I did. I mean, I'm kind of stoked that I had some of them, but let me see if I've got one of the E85 cars in here. Doesn't look like I do. Fox body's in here. Let me see something here. I want to try to give you guys a visual aid. There's the pass where my car made 666 on the green screen, made 662. Anyway, I can tell you what it will not do, what E85 will not do. It will not make more power. It will make some more torque down low. And that's about it. The thing is I had Quick Brick's car, which was a SRT Charger, the heaviest, the biggest of the group. Anyway, I had his car on the dyno, and with the stock cam, it made, I want to say, this is on a Mustang dyno, by the way, made around 430-ish to the rear wheels. So what would have translated to like 470 on a dyno jet. Somewhere right in that range. Just depends on the dyno jet. But anyway, you get the idea. Right around in that range. And then we tuned it on E85, and it made 433 in terms of horsepower, but it did pick up torque before peak torque on the left-hand side of the chart. And I want to say it picked up about 10 to 12, no, it wasn't that much. At the most, 10 pound-feet of torque, okay? But it was before peak torque, and basically leveled off right after peak torque. So it kind of kicked the back of the curve up a little bit. I had that car on the dyno and I was doing power sweeps with it on E85, trying to make more power. And I literally started off where I was on the tune, added 2 degrees, made a hit. Added another 2 degrees, made a hit. Added another 2 degrees, made a hit. This is after getting fueling pretty well right where we needed it to be. And Alex had dialed in fueling actually, and I went in and was playing with fuel as well, trying to throw a little bit more fuel at it, see if it liked it, a little bit less, see if it liked it. It didn't care. Didn't matter. So had that result. And then we put a small cam in the car. Car loved the cam. Did the same thing though. Tried to get more power out of it with the 85. In this case, I knew this was really going to be a moot point because the car didn't respond with a stock cam. Did not expect it to respond at all with the aftermarket cam, and it did not. Again, made a little bit better torque down low because we tuned it for 93 and for E85. Made a little bit more power down low. Could not get the car to do anything with E85 on the big end with either the stock or the aftermarket cam. And the funny thing is I did a power sweep way past what you would normally go in terms of timing. It like normally, whether it's E85 or not, they're going to like somewhere around 17 to 18 degrees of timing on the big end. For most air charge values that put you in like normal air. I was going 19, 22, 24, 25, and the car, it just didn't, you're not going to run into knock, and it was just not going to make any more power. And those were short hits. I would make the hit at like, because I already knew what it was going to do down low. It didn't really matter. I was past peak torque and just making horsepower hits, trying to pull a number out of it. And it was like, nope, not feeling it. Although it made the same power. I think at 23, it started losing power. It was just overtimed. Was it 22 or 23? One of the two, it started losing because it was just overtimed. But yeah, just don't do it would be my suggestion. And if you did do it though, stock cats are A-okay. Don't worry about that. Stock cats are good to go with them. Ruth saying, get a good diff brace is what got rid of my wheel hop altogether. That is true. Summer saying, hit that like button. Yes, hit it. Ruth saying, one of my friends just recently ran an 8.6 in his cat with a Gen 5 whip and some built internals recently. That's my goal. There's a lot of 8-second whip cars running around right now. I think that there's, it's almost getting to the point now where an 8-something is just kind of par for the course. It used to be an 8-second car was the end of the discussion. And there's actually some kind of street-ish type of cars that are getting into the 8s. So, and that whip is definitely helping them. Oh, Riff's talking about the dual pass. Yeah, there's a lot of trick stuff in that whip. It's really good. Like I say, it's really good. I don't know of a lot of people. I don't know of anybody that's got one and then said, no, I'd rather have the 4.5 Whipple back on the thing, the big one. Again, they're just making more power with the 3.0. It's a better design. It's more efficient. It is making all that power through efficiency. But, well, guys, with that, we are at an hour and a half. I have got to wrap this up because I got to wake up crazy early. But want to thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out. Hopefully you guys had fun. Love each and every one of y'all. Would not do this without you. Remember, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And with that, that's a wrap. Y'all have a great one, and we will see you on the next one. That's a wrap. Adios.